Hello everybody and welcome to this Let's Play of Ronin. This is a heck of a game. I think that it's very fun. It's sort of combines free-flowing stealth with a turn-based, more puzzly combat kind of thing. I've seen some mixed reviews of it, and honestly I had a hard time wrapping my mind around the mechanics a bit when I first played, so I figured I'd do this playthrough, this Let's Play, to get everybody familiar with what it's like when you've sort of more or less figured things out. Now I'm playing on New Game Plus, which means I'm starting the game with all powers unlocked, and I'll be going over those at some length as we go through. That was a warp right there, for instance. But it also means that there are more enemies and they are more difficult. Now in every level I'm going to be going for a number of achievements. These are optional in regular New Game, however you must complete them all in New Game to unlock a new power every time. You do get to pick the power you unlock, which is nice, but in New Game Plus they are mandatory. So what I'm going to be going for every time is all guards killed, no alarms raised, and we haven't seen anybody start to raise an alarm yet, although that'll come up. No civilians killed, and then the level complete. As you can see, there's quite a big difference between the time when you're doing this free-flowing exploration and the time when you're in turn-based combat. Basically, until you are detected by a guard, you'll be in this free-flowing exploration. You can kill a guard, and if nobody else detects you, he'll stay in free flow. However, as soon as you're detected, you enter into turn-based, and you can see that you can only move a certain amount, and everybody gets a chance to aim and fire at you and things like that. Now, one of the criticisms I've heard of this game is they say that the turn-based combat simply doesn't work as well as the stealth-based exploration. And, you know, I disagree with that assessment. Just a quick little note here. You'll see that I cut out the loading screens and the exit screens per levels. They're all exactly the same. And part of the reason that I've done that is partially because those are just boring to watch, and partially because I'm going for what I call a quick run. It's not exactly a speed run, because I'm sure the people who are actually doing like speed demos archive and true speed runs would just be disgusted by calling this an actual speed run. I haven't watched any speedruns in particular, so I don't know what the best routes are or whatever. I wanted to have this be particularly my own gameplay. But I am going to try to beat the whole game in less than an hour. My idea is that since we are apparently a samurai enthusiast, having the name Ronin, and having that old samurai sword there, that kitana, well, I don't know if it's a katana, it's probably some other kind of sword, whatever. We want to get home in an hour and a half to watch the Kurosawa marathon, so allowing for, let's say, 30 minutes of motorcycle traffic time to get home, that's what we're going to have to manage. Anyway, back to what I was saying. One of the criticisms I've heard is that the combat doesn't work as well as the stealth, and I do think that that's a bit of an unfair criticism. What I will say is it's very easy to get overwhelmed in the turn-based combat. A part of that is because your movement is really restricted. You can't run regularly while in turn-based combat. You may only jump, use any powers you've collected, and slice with your sword. However, you do gain powers pretty easily, and as long as you don't have too many enemies going after you, you can usually deal with them all pretty well. There are hints you get throughout the game in the loading sections. This is really interesting, and one of them says, "Hint, this is not a stealth game," and I really just fundamentally disagree with that. If you try to march through this game tackling every encounter just absolutely head-on, you will fail pretty severely, and I beat my head against that wall for a while. But when you really see it as a blend of action and stealth, I think that it's at its most fun. You may notice I didn't take the elevator up there. The reason for that is because I'm going for the quick play, and elevators are extremely slow. They are not the speedrunner or indeed the quick player's friend. You may also note that these doors only have keypads on one side of them, while some of the doors have keypads on both sides. The deal is, green doors open whenever you approach them, but a red door has to have a keypad on the side of it for it to open up for you. You can also unlock red doors into green doors with a special environmental cue sometimes. So you can see here that I'm using this stealth kill from above. The deal with that is it makes no noise. Now you can see that if somebody saw that happen in the light, they would investigate it and they shoot their little laser eye out. That will see you even in the dark. Also, If you started in the light and you were seen and you jump into the dark, they will follow you and you can't hide in the dark that way. But otherwise, generally, as long as in the dark, you're completely undetected. As I said before, there are 4 goals per level, and failing any of them is an instant game over in New Game Plus mode. Now that's particularly onerous because if civilians, who are those researcher-looking guys down there, see you, they'll attempt to call you in, and, well, we'll get into that a little bit more later. For right now, since we've just seen the third kind of enemy, let's talk about enemies. There's those single-shot tuxedo guys there. You can see that I've just put down a holographic clone of myself, which enemies will preferentially attack for a few turns, giving you some blessed respite. Anyway, there's those single-shot guys. They're not super dangerous, although in numbers they can be pretty deadly. Then there are the machine gun guards. In the regular New Game, they only shoot in a single direction, making them pretty easy to fool. However, in New Game Plus, they have this big wide spread. And third and finally, you have these samurai. They charge at you, and they take 2 hits to kill, and that's especially bad. Oh, here's our first target. Not much of a fight, that's the old man. The samurai do take 2 hits to take down, and so when there's anybody else around who's aiming at you, you really don't have 2 spare turns to attack them. Well, it really takes 3 turns. 1 to stun them, 1 to jump to where they are, and 1 to finish them off. And so I'm in a lot of trouble here because of all these guards firing at me and the samurai as well. So my tactic is run around here and get out of their field of view. You can see he's starting to call me in, and you get an 8 count when somebody starts to call you in. In New Game Plus, if they reach 0, they'll have called an alert, and that's an instant game over. Civilians will do this too, and that's why you absolutely can't be seen by them. So one thing that it's really helpful to note is in freeform mode, you can actually pause the game at any point by holding down spacebar. And if you hold down spacebar and do other actions, then you kind of go frame by frame doing things, which allows some really excellent precision. This is also a good time to mention, you hear the elevator music, I think, for the first time. There are a few levels where they make you take the elevator, and those are annoying just because they're so long. It's kind of funny in a macabre way to hear that muzak as you're jumping around and murdering everybody, but it's just frankly not worth it. So if I can avoid them, I will. I'm also breaking these windows here because you can probably work out what's going to happen. There's all these enemy-only doors. The doors with red above them are only enemies come out of them. And as soon as you activate one of the terminals, enemies pour out of them, and you want to stealth kill as many, as I've said before, of these guys as you can. Now, if that had been a machine gun guy down there, I would have been toast, because the spread from his fire would have gone up and killed me. In this level, in general, you want to take out enemies highest to lowest, and that's just a good rule of thumb in general, too, if only because of windows of viewing. You know, the enemies who are up highest have the greatest ability to see what's going on lower in the room. Okay, that is the teleport, and it is one of the most useful powers that you can have. So this is a good time to talk about powers. In the bottom left-hand corner there, you can see sort of the power chart, and those are filled by performing aggressive actions. Not by doing the stealth kills, but that's fine, because stealth kills are sort of a parallel system. Bumping somebody while you're jumping at them and knocking them over gives you 1 circle. Stabbing them gives you 2. If you fill all the circles up, you get what's called a limit break, which is essentially just a free turn. It can be very useful, but sometimes actually less useful than some of the powers might end up being. You might also see when I'm jumping in turn-based combat mode. There we go again. This is way too close. I really shouldn't have done that, but whatever, it worked out for me. When I'm jumping in turn-based combat, there is a red and a white arc to my jumps. Now see here, I kind of made a mistake. I really should have taken out the top guy first, then the bottom one, but as it is, he has a bead on me. Fortunately, he aims badly once, and that can happen sort of randomly sometimes. Also note that you can teleport back to your clones once they're put down. And anyway, that's enough of him. As I was saying, powers fill up by performing aggressive actions. And once your powers fill up, then you can do those abilities. One of the most useful ones is a bump followed immediately by a stab. This only works if you're in free flow mode, but if you bump into somebody and mash the spacebar, they will be paused just like this. Well, this worked in turn-based too, but only because he had just detected me. they will be paused in the air just a few inches away from you, and you can stab them with your sword. That gets you 3 powers really quickly, and 3 is the magic number that it takes to get the... that's it for that level, very nice. That's the magic number that it takes to get the warp. Warps are great because you can attack people all the way across the battlefield, and enemies, if you appear behind them, take a single turn to turn around, so you can get in a little bit of free action during that time. Here they really meant for you to climb above that ceiling up there and discover the machine gun guard, but if you zealously jump all the way through, you can knock everybody out. Okay, this is sort of an annoying section for the quick run because this is a long elevator ride, and generally in this game, if there's a long elevator ride, that's because they're hoping to impress you or to draw your attention to something. Here, this is the first example of the hardest configuration in the game, which is these 2 hanging down sections connected by a gap and windows. And the real trouble with that is, as I said, if an enemy sees you, they will either start firing at you. Notice, by the way, that you can teleport to get out of the line of fire of those machine gun guards. Look at the guy on the top right. He's not trying to fire at us. Instead, he's spending all of his time about to call us in. That's the free turn that I mentioned there. And that can be really tricky because, again, if he gets to 0, that is an automatic game over. This level is the first really hard one, and it's one that I've actually pathed out pretty well. I didn't do it perfectly. I didn't think this guy on the top there was going to come out quite yet. He doesn't come out until his window's broken, and the window back there is broken, but it was broken a bit early. Still didn't mess up my strategy too much. Anyway, as I was saying, the problem with those 2 areas hanging down there is as soon as somebody detects you on the one side, they'll probably start doing a countdown, and it's very difficult to take care of everybody on one side, jump all the way across, because, you know, it's turn-based jumping, and deal with them in time to not have the countdown. Okay, now watch this. This is cool. You put down the decoy there, you knock a guy into the samurai, which kills them. The samurai jumps at your decoy and jumps straight out the window. Having samurais jump out the window to their deaths is by far the best way to deal with them. Also, getting around is actually much faster in free flow mode than it is in the turn-based. I was hoping to break through the window there, but that didn't quite work out. Oh well. And that's because in turn-based, you can only move a certain amount before the countdown happens. Now, here's another excellent example of that decoy being used there. Having this many people firing on you is really too many to deal with. Now, that was a terrible idea what I did just there, and I have no idea why it worked. Basically, if you teleport into a samurai, if they're not stunned, then that is an instant death for you. They're too quick. The only thing that you can do is either get them to jump to their death, or hit them once, jump to where they are, and hit them again. So that, as I said, was a place before that I pathed out. And my guess when people say things like, oh, the combat doesn't work well in this game, my guess as to what happened is that they tried a section like that and just tried to run in kamikaze style and ended up beating their head against the floor several times, because those things can go very badly for you in a hurry, and they can get to be a little frustrating. One nice thing is, as soon as you press the hit with sword button, there's really no getting around it. Even if that person goes a long distance away, they will still be hit. They can't fly out of your range of view, so that is very handy. I didn't really use clones too much in regular New Game mode. I don't know if they actually are more useful in New Game Plus or if I just appreciated them more, but they really come into their own. Check out the samurai. It looks like getting made in the background there. I think a lot of the backgrounds and the character designs and things like that, little clues really tell the story well. Besides that, the only real story clues that you get are going to be the boss screens, and I'm going to be including those in the thread. But other than that, you really don't get anything beyond what you can glean from the environments. And, I appreciate that kind of minimalistic storytelling. I think the game being named Ronin, you can guess that we probably once were serving one of these people. They all appear to be together in a corporation kind of thing, and presumably there was some kind of betrayal or blackmail or something like that. Okay, second boss level. You can see those lasers down there in the initial door. That was a bunch of people aiming their guns right at that door, so obviously it's a bad idea to go in there. You can also walk up a floor to get into the middle of this room. You can see that door down there. but it is right in the middle of everybody. Everybody will fire at you all at once, and you will almost certainly die. The real way to get around this is sort of punctuated discovery, like what I'm doing here. You want to stay out of sight for as long as is possible, and if you can get people doing these long countdowns while you perform stealth kills, so much the better. Stealth kills do not advance your power meter at all. However, if you handle things correctly, then you'll take care of everybody. You see there, I was holding down the spacebar while I was doing those kills, so they happened extremely quickly. You will take care of everybody and not even need to use your powers. I mean, this would have been just, I should do a little bit where I show what it's like to walk into the middle of that room. It's, you die very quickly. Now here I mess up a bit. I didn't want to be that far down. You can actually break through that window and have him not see you, and if he doesn't see you, then the rest of these guys don't see you. There's a bit of a shared intelligence when it comes to AI. If you're discovered by one guard, then all the other ones sort of instantly catch sight of where you are. Unless they're a certain distance away, which is a little bit of a shame. But I do like the nightclub atmosphere of this place. I would say that, well, the previous level was a bit difficult too, but this second level boss is really where they start ratcheting up the difficulty. You have got to, especially in New Game Plus, where again, these machine gun guards have the ability to sweep with their shots, you've really got to be on top of what you're doing. Using that limit break lets me get through here. Notice that I stopped my turn right above him. That's because I knew people were going to be aiming wherever I ended up, and because I ended up right above him, I was then able to drop down and attack him, and then they would miss me with their shots there. If you kill somebody right in a door, they hold the door open, which can be useful for quickly getting around certain places. So as I said before, I've pathed out some of the harder levels. Usually it's the bosses, and then I think basically every level in the fifth section. So if I haven't said before, there are 5 levels, I guess you could say. There's 5 stages. I don't know how we want to use this terminology. There's 5 bosses, and each boss consists of 2 levels where you're getting intel on where they're going to be, followed by a final boss attack. Now here again, the Wise Gal, who is the second boss, is all about these big rooms with just a ton of enemies in them, and they're really impossible if you don't... see, I think he kind of got me with his laser there, but fortunately I was far enough away that it didn't matter. They're basically just impossible if you don't do the stealth thing first. That's why this is in part an action game for sure, but you really have to play it stealth-wise, especially when they have tricky environments like this one. These 2 guys are very difficult to get to in turn-based. And if I did have to give one criticism to the turn-based style of gameplay, I would say it's much harder to get around. The fact that you can't walk or crawl on ceilings or do anything like that really hampers it. I'm sure there's some problem with it, there's some reason they don't let you do it, but I'm not exactly sure what it is, and it just makes it a lot more awkward to get around. Basically, you want to have a few enemies left by the time you barge in, or you want to have a lot of cover, you want a lot of vertical areas to jump, you want a lot of places to hide behind, and that's just not a luxury we have in any of the Wise Gal's places. Now, I really should have taken the stairs down. There's some stairs over to the left that I could have taken, but this elevator is unavoidable. So that's a few places in a row that have had these long elevator rides, and it gets there's even more of them later, but fortunately there's not too many. So that's 2 of the 5 bosses down already, and looking at about 18 minutes of gameplay, we're doing pretty good. This is the 3rd one, the Doctor, and you can already see he's a scientist and is involved in creating a lot of the gadgets you have. These levels tend to focus much more on civilians. That's why these stealth kills are basically mandatory. Because as I said before, see, what they want you to do is run right through there. You'll run right into that searchlight and attract the civilians. As soon as a civilian sees you, he starts counting down the alert, just like those guys do. The problem is, you're actually not allowed to kill any civilian. And so basically that means getting seen by a civilian is more or less the kiss of death in these levels. I guess if you were right by the very, very end of a level, you might make it out. But otherwise, you either have to kill the civilian to stop the countdown, or you'll get the countdown will complete, the alarm will be called, and then the game is over that way. I guess, like I said, every time you knock over somebody, the countdown restarts, but for civilians, as soon as they stand up, they'll never forget that you were there, and they'll just start the countdown right over again. So if we had alerted those 2 civilians up there, I honestly don't think we could knock them down often enough. They don't stay down for long enough that I think... And we don't really have any non-lethal options of dealing with people long-term, so I think the game would more or less be over. We are, of course, hackers extraordinaire, managing to hack all these things in just a second or two. But fortunately, nobody will ever raise an alarm if they see just a hacked terminal. People will raise the alarm if they see a dead body, and that goes for civilians too. They'll also hear sword-based attacks and takedowns much more readily. Now here, I freeze as soon as I break through the window, which allows me to not jump into the samurai. If I jumped into him, it would have been an instant death. When it comes to prioritizing enemies, typically the way you want to do it is samurai are of course first. You'll want a strategy for dealing with them. However, you can actually, if there's only one of them and maybe only a few other guards, you do want to deal with machine gun guards as soon as you possibly can. So I can imagine even letting a samurai live to go after a machine gun guard. Because if those guys are around for any length of time, they just murder you with those big sweeping arcs. And if you can jump behind the samurai, they take a turn recovering. Sometimes they don't jump at you all the time. You know, sometimes they take a break between jumps, so they may not be quite as immediately deadly. But in general, the stealth, the staying in shadows, the very precise platforming, and the stealth kills are your friends in this game. I think that the combat is fairly well done. You haven't seen me die yet, and I will not die on this run, in fact, because that's not a very quick way to do things. But, in fact, a single bullet from any target or a single swipe by a samurai will kill you. I don't know why I didn't just walk to that elevator and go down, but sometimes you do funny things when you're trying to rush through. Some of those enemy doors will only open and spit out an enemy if there is a ruckus near them, or sometimes if you break a specific pane of glass, they'll open. I've noticed. And they, you do need to kill every enemy in a level, but if an enemy door doesn't send out its enemy, then that counts as everybody's dead. The only thing the game looks at is every enemy that's in the level, every soldier, dead? Now this part would be impossible except for the fact that elevators actually attract attention, so the preferred strategy here is to make a little noise, he comes to investigate and then goes back. I guess you're just super blendy in. I don't think you've got any particularly, like, I don't know, sight-baffling gear or anything like that. I don't know exactly what the deal is. I think, and again, this is just sort of storytelling through the game, I think that you're supposed to be sort of a rogue agent or something like that. My guess is that we're supposed to be the little girl in that photograph. See, we can go through red doors as long as there's a key card by them. I should have gone all the way to the right here and probably taken out that person, but that would have taken a little bit longer, so for the sake of speed, I just decided to blow them away through there. I wish that I could have taken them down, but if I put down a duplicate here, then he'll always be shooting at it, and I can jump up here to just under his shot. I mean, this is cutting it a bit close, but oh, those things are so useful. You saw that the enemy door there didn't really spit anybody out until there started being gunshots near it. Anyway, as I said, I think that you were supposed to be the little girl in that photograph, and something happened, some kind of betrayal, and so now you're out for blood. So as I mentioned before, these stealth kills make no noise, but people will see it if you do it in the light, so this is just sort of making sure this guy isn't watching while anything happens. And there you can see sort of the pinpoint platforming that's able to happen here. At first, it really took me a while to get used to the arcs that the Ronin can jump in, and the length of jumps, it's not quite as long as I expected at first. For some reason, I remember feeling hampered in my jumping ability at first, and I'm not sure why, because as I progressed and got more familiar with the game, those feelings went right away. I mean, you really do have a pretty tremendous freedom of movement. Okay, now if you just jump out of the elevator right away there, you'll get seen by that guy's laser beam, which is bad for your long-term health. Having two machine gun guys alerted to your presence and after you is a very bad thing. Also note the strategic use of spacebar there. I basically held it after I stabbed anybody, which allowed me to anticipate and very quickly jump away from the laser eyes, the incoming scans. Now, I don't mean to give out any spoilers, but we will never fight that big guy in the background there, and I really wish that we would at some point. I debated trying to get out of everybody's point of view, but instead I managed to pull off what is my honestly least used, and I'm not sure why because it's super helpful, power, is those shurikens. There's the real benefit of using the duplicates is really that it just keeps the machine gun guys from firing at you. Now you see that guy counting down there. I'm not sure exactly why it happens, but every so once in a while, instead of firing at you or taking aim, somebody will just decide that instead of that, they're going to call in, and I guess it takes 8 seconds or whatever to fully call in a threat. And that actually ends up being fine. That's very useful for you because it means you have to prioritize them because you need to either bump them or kill them before those 8 seconds are up. But until that time, they're just not any kind of a threat at all, and you're free to ignore them as you will. So the shurikens, I think, are only active while you jump, and I think you additionally need several enemies to be taking aim at you. You will only aim at enemies who are currently active. Okay, this is the boss level for the doctor, and it's very tricky. Notice that this guy was just out in the open. You could have sword killed him, but that would attract the civilian who would come over and see the body. So you've got to bump him until he's under the ledge there, and then stealth kill him. She is attracted by the sound of the bumping, but then she doesn't see him when he's strung up. I guess it's like they say, nobody ever looks up. Now you want to be quick for this part, because these two civilians here, the top and the bottom, are walking asymmetrically, and you need them to both be facing away from you, so you can bump this guy into this darkened room here, and then make him have a bad day. And if you don't catch them on their first cycle, whatever you want to call it, then it takes them quite a while to be synchronized again. I like these levels, and I especially like the variety. The first couple levels were honestly more tutorials, I would say. The old man levels were just sort of general, get used to the stage of gameplay kind of things. And the Wise Gals levels were, they just throw a bunch of enemies at you, and they really make it so that, my take on this is they're trying to teach people, please use stealth first. Okay, this is a little bit cheap. I actually don't like this. See, there's a civilian who's talking to a guard there, but civilians almost never talk to guards. They usually only talk to other civilians. And you saw that they were both attracted by the sound of the hacking. Well, if you don't notice that it's a civilian and a guard, then you might assume it was two civilians and just leave and run away, and then there's no way to take out that remaining guard without being seen by the civilian. Just kind of a bummer. It feels like they're tricking you. That is a fun little trick. If somebody is scanning, or if they're facing towards you and you want to teleport in front of them, usually when you teleport into somebody, you knock them and they go flying. But if you hold down spacebar as you teleport, it didn't work there because he didn't see me right away. And I was in turn-based mode. You have to be in free flow mode for this to work. If you hold down space, you will pause the game right as you appear in front of them, and that allows you to stab them right away. And sometimes you even get credit for the bump, which gives you that 3 that you need for the teleport. Sword throws are something which are extremely useful if there are a lot of enemies around and you're trying not to be seen, because people don't go into alert mode and detect you if they see a sword flying through the air. The only way that happens is if they physically see you. Okay, so this is the doctor, and you'd be forgiven for thinking he's just like the old man, but you want to shoot past him, because look at that, he uses a decoy just like you do. I think that's really cool. But if you shoot past him, you can take care of the enemy right as he pops out of the gate, and boom, don't even let him get away at all. If you let the doctor keep going, he actually jumps through these windows, and he keeps running away, and if he reaches the end of the level, that's a game over. You cannot let the doctor escape. And yeah, this is absolutely time for a decoy. And you can see that this is really no picnic. Now, once you enter into turn-based mode, you can catch up with people pretty well. But still, you definitely do not want to have to deal with all these guys at once. And thank goodness I bumped into somebody so that I got enough points for the decoy. It's only 1 point for a decoy, which is really a lifesaver in certain situations. So, as I mentioned, having this many people active all at the same time can be really a bummer. And part of the reason is if anybody sees you outside of there, as you see there, they start calling you in, and there's just a lot of people to deal with. There'll be a few times in the future that we almost get caught by stuff like this, and boy, this is really coming right down to the wire. A good tactic when somebody's caught you like this is to hold down spacebar as you move around, because it really allows for maximum platforming. You did see, though, however, like I was really pretty badly outnumbered there, and I was still able to deal with people with strategic uses of decoys and warps and stuff like that, and I wasn't even packed out. I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing. Alright, check this out. Yep, you can get people when the sword returns. I like that. Also, there is a height limit, and it's not very high, that knocking enemies out of will kill them, but you have no such limit. I guess you've trained long and hard in the arts or whatever. Okay, so here is the 4th level. This is the soldier, and we introduce mines. The deal with mines is if you end a turn or if you land on the surface within the red area, the mine goes off and it's an insta-death. The soldier also wants you to think about your environment. You can just charge straight in, but that's very difficult, if not impossible. If you saw that little roof overhang there and you took it, then you can set up this absolute beauty of a scenario. So there was a stab and a bump, and a teleport. All the mines are cleared, all the guys are taken down with only 2 swings of the sword. The soldier's levels are probably tied with my favorite. I really like the end levels too, but as you progress in this game, and the levels get more and more complicated, the solutions to them get more kind of elegant in a way. Here, you might think it's a soldier coming out of here and wait around to catch him, but nope, it's a civilian, so you want to run away. And when you start to get these like fun, elegant solutions to levels, I don't know, I just find that to be a lot of fun. They really become puzzles to put together, and sure, the first couple times you play through, you're going to be dying a lot. I saw the laser coming at me there, which is how I knew to jump behind the guy and warp to the back one, in the hopes that his body would knock over the other guy. Fortunately, he was close enough to do so. One thing that I think I've mentioned before, though, is if you're able to get behind somebody, then even if they have their gun drawn and they've got a bead on you, they take a turn to turn around, and that can be all the time you need sometimes. Now, if somebody's got their back to you, there's really no way you don't just knock them out of the window like that. It's fun that there's 2 ways through this level, and in fact, I think the top way is a bit safer. A lot of times I'm going to be taking the less safe route through a level, and that is so that I can do it with speed. We're sitting at about halfway through right now, and we've just started the 4th of 5 bosses. However, levels, as I say, get a lot longer as we're going through, so that's probably about right. I think we're just about on target here. I know I've had some things that didn't work out quite as well in the earlier maps, and so if I really wanted to cut time, I could go back and redo some of those, but this ought to be okay. Now, if you sword kill this guy when the samurai is facing towards you, he'll notice that and raise the alarm, so you don't want to do that. You wait till he's facing away. If you walk on the bottom, that guy on the top right notices you. Unfortunately, I forgot that he shoots out his detection laser when you break through his window there, so I get detected by him. One thing that's kind of a bummer is there are no friendly fires from most of the enemies. They can't shoot each other. However, if you knock somebody into the samurai, then he will sword them to death. Anytime you can, you want to take out a samurai not by direct conflict like that. It's way easier to stealth kill them or to make them jump off a ledge like we have a couple times in the past. This part here can be really, really tricky unless you do one trick, and the problem is if you don't get it, there's a checkpoint here, but the checkpoint doesn't let you do that, and that is jumping out of that light before anybody sees you. Because look, there's a neurotoxin, and in New Game Plus, you just get almost no time at all. Because remember, you have to kill everybody. Now that I'm saying this, I wonder if you could just escape and let the neurotoxin take care of everybody, but I've never done it that way. Anyway, it'd be hard to get out of here while in turn-based mode. I think you have about a second or two once the neurotoxin starts before you croak yourself, but it's just really not a scenario you want to be part of if you can. The checkpoints, I know you haven't seen many of them because I've been doing pretty well and not dying, but the checkpoints in this game are usually really forgiving and they don't put you in bad situations, but that's one example where the checkpoint really just doesn't work for you. If you get that checkpoint, it starts right when the guy comes out of the door and sees you right away, and believe you me, having a machine gun guard see you right at the beginning of a checkpoint and be down a hallway almost too far for you to jump is just not a good scenario to be in. I like that little touch there that you have to swing from that ceiling, but you can't actually touch it. And you can see, as I've said before, that for platforming is really pretty particular in this game. So the biggest thing they can do to mess you up is to put guards a big distance away from you, so that you have to do these long jumps. Oh, this is so close. Okay, that illustrates something which you really can't count on. That was bad tactics right there. And that is sometimes, not all the time, I want to stress that, but sometimes, if you jump very quickly perpendicular to a stream of machine gun guards' bullets, and if the stream is going all in one direction, then you can actually jump through the stream. It's not like he shoots a straight line of death. The game maps the individual bullets, but boy, you don't want to count on that. So, dropping a decoy makes you jump straight up. I happen to jump right between his bullets and save myself in that way. But again, that is not a safe strategy or anything approximating it. There was probably a different way. In fact, I think I remember there was a different way of doing that. But I messed it up. A lot of small things can happen in this game and mess you up, and that's kind of what makes it fun. It's just a fun playground. Okay, I don't actually like this. If you go through the right door, then the civilians see you because you're in the light. If you try to take out that guy, then you've killed a civilian and there's a game over. You can crawl around up top, but that civilian sees you unless you take the elevator up and then take it back down, because he'll go over to investigate it, and he'll go back and he goes just slightly to the right of where he initially started out. But it's not really enough to see, obviously, and the only way you can tell is he always catches you if you don't take the elevator up and then take it back down. It wastes time, and it's not really a mechanic that's ever used again, so I'm not a fan. So here I use sort of a common tactic, which is if you jump just above somebody, these guys only get one shot per turn, and they shoot where you were, so they end up wasting their turn doing that. The one thing I really don't like about the teleport is you tend to teleport people just a little farther than what you can sword, and so unless you can get them on the way, then you've kind of teleported them out of your range of view. This is the same thing that happens, incidentally, with the samurai. You can see I jump up and then hanging in the air I go down for the kill there. That's another good tactic, more or less. Also, taking a lot of people at the same time with the warps is always a winner of a strategy. You can see people's numbers above their heads for how many turns they have until they recover, and that can be very handy to know. Also, guards are not perfect at pathing towards you. However, that's not really something you can count on. It's just, oh, that was so close. It's just that if you happen to get it, that can be a nice little bonus. So in a quick run, I really want to avoid getting drawn into these long, drawn-out firefights. You can do them by just jumping around until you exhaust people, and I'm sure you've seen this by now, but guards can actually run out of bullets, which can be very handy for you. Especially, see, I would have got detected here if I hadn't tweaked him a bit with the elevator. Just a weird thing. Not a big fan of it. It's one of the few really bad design decisions in the game, though, I think. The levels are really solid. I also like the little music that plays. So again, if you had just jumped out right away, you would have got detected by the guy here. Yeah, as I was saying, guards run out of ammo as they're firing at you. The tuxedo guys have, I think, about 6 rounds. It could be a bit more than that. You can see I've incapacitated one and killed the other. That helps me warp through. One problem with the turn-based is, again, you're not really free to move very much. If he had not decided to call me in and instead taken aim, he might have been a bit more trouble. Anyway, the tuxedo guards have about 6 rounds, and the machine gun guards only have 2 sprays they can do before they have to reload. This is tricky, because normally you'd think, oh, I bet everybody's going to come pouring out of those enemy rooms as soon as I hit the console. Well, nope. They come pouring out of the enemy rooms as soon as you're near the console, which is not something that ever happens again outside of this one instance. And so they're just trying to catch you there, because you're probably going to approach it thinking that you're safe and, you know, get ready to jump as soon as you hack, or whatever it is that you do. I guess you might have like a program that you install or something, but I like to think you're just absolutely a computer wizard. Anyway, again, they're saying bonus objectives, but that's not true in New Game Plus. You must do the bonus objectives. Anyway, they try to catch you that way. And so sometimes you'll just be able to jump around, confounding the guards and staying right out of their view. Sometimes I can get on the motorcycle and get out of here. Wasn't to be this time. But this time, that's not the case. This may be my single favorite level. This one or the final level are both so intricate and fun that I just have a really good time with them. Part of what might push this one over the edge, though, is that this was really when I first started to get the game, I think, on regular New Game. I'm being a bit reckless here. I don't have to jump through and do all this stuff. I'm getting detected more. Not that that's a problem. Detection is not the same as alarms, as I'm sure you've seen. But this is a much quicker way to play the game. Anyway, I had gotten through the rest of the game all right. I mean, I had been reloading quite a bit and everything. But I was playing this level and just getting massacred, just dying time and time and time and time again. Because I was trying to jump in and just hack everybody to death. And it didn't help that my friend Ms. Bundefund was watching my broadcast and providing, shall we say, helpful commentary. But I would always jump down. I didn't really register that the ceiling was something you could jump up onto. Once up here, you can jump on top of the streetlights. Thank goodness I didn't break through that window, or else I would have attracted everybody. And you can get over to this other side, because what would happen was I would get down and I would start fighting in the center there. And the center is a big, long plain, basically. And there's not really any cover in there, and there's just a ton of guys, and then there's also the officer, who is, though he has some fancy armor, just a regular samurai. That's the same is true for every enemy except for the old man. All of them are just regular enemies with kind of a new skin on them, which I like. I like that they don't have crazy powers. I guess that the doctor has that one decoy that he uses, but other than that, he's basically the old man. He doesn't fight back. I don't know why I debate opening this door, but I do, and I don't think it matters. You can see that that height was just far enough to knock the guy to his death there. Anyway, I would jump down, and then people from both sides who were in these buildings here would start shooting at me or calling me in, like what this guy is doing. And I was a little busy not dying from all the bullets flying at me down in the center, so I really just didn't have time or the ability to get up here and deal with the people in the buildings, and that did me in, I don't know, probably a dozen times, and then I got frustrated and quit for a bit, and then I came back, and I realized I started looking at the level more, and I started making absolutely sure that I did everything stealth-wise that I could possibly do before I waded in and started doing anything, action-based. And again, the action works fine as long as you remember, and I think this is just part of the narrative. You're not some opposing strike team. You're not a super well-funded machine gun toting. You're not the Marine from Doom or whatever. You're probably this rogue, half-crazy agent guy with a sword. You are a Ronin in the true sense of the term. You don't have a base, you don't have funding like these guys do, so you've got to take it slowly and carefully. And notice here, as I deal with these two gave me plenty of problems. Normally I would jump down in the middle and then throw myself through that plate glass window trying to get at them, and by that time there would be 4 or 5 people aiming at me and it would take me right down. But once you take them down, this is a much more equitable fight. You can see the officer running around down there. And I even like the story this one tells. Look how you don't see the company logo on any of the buildings, so this was apparently some rival or competitor. But it's obvious that they pulled up in their armored assault truck, got out, and just shot everybody right up. He's a mercenary or an enforcer for the company. And also, because I'm doing a lot of power kills, which are sword throws, he's not even really seeing me. The only people who detect me are ones that see the dead bodies. But because they don't see me doing it, they don't raise the alarm and they don't see where I am. Now, I actually hit him when I'm trying to draw the sword back here, and this is me pressing space a lot as I'm doing some fancy footwork. If anybody had actually detected me over to the right, I'd be in real trouble. But fortunately, I never actually entered the light, so I get a free kill on him here, basically. And I'm up to limit break, which I did not take, fortunately, because I was in free flow mode. It didn't take me that, and it left me all my sword throws. And so here I am, with really only these 2 left by the time I get detected. And heck, you can take down 2 people in this game. That's not really a problem. In fact, the first building that I crashed into after I killed the doctor, I think had maybe 4 or 5 guys in it, and that's really about the most that you're probably able to deal with, just because I thought there was an exit there. I guess there's not. Just because there are so you know, when there's that many of them, they're not all going to run out of ammo at the same time, because they'll be shooting you in sort of staggered turns, and there's just nothing for you to do. You can just dance around forever. Okay, this is level 5-1, and this is maybe the hardest level in the game, because it has another one of those darn separated by a hanging area, windowed places down here. So I've got this pathed out pretty well. So let's narrate. The first thing you want to do is take out the leftmost machine gun guard. So you jump through, and the first thing is to take him out. Now, as soon as you walk over until you're at the same level as that rightmost guy, then everybody over on the right-hand side sees you. So you want to make sure the very first time you're over there, you can see the alarm started getting called in instantly when you take him out. Now, everybody's going to start shooting at you, and so what you need is to jump on the topmost platform here very quickly. So with your first move, you leap halfway across the gap, bring yourself up with your grapple line, and then once they all lose you, they start calling you in, but who even cares? Because by this point, once you've taken out everybody on top, the game is pretty much over. I'm avoiding using my warp power because sometimes I think it's a little unreliable for these stealthy situations like this. And when I'm holding down space in the way that I am, there you see, I did not use the warp and elected instead to use the sword. And I do like throwing people out of windows. That's just fun for me. It just goes a lot better for me. Anyway, I really should have hit that terminal there. That probably cost me about 30 seconds because I have to go back for it later, which is a shame, but what are you going to do? That was the hardest part of the level, and that will absolutely kill you if you don't know what you're doing and have a good path worked out. And this bit down here is quite a bit harder too. I said before that about 5 people is the most that you can reasonably handle, and that's pretty true. It's not impossible that I would have died there, actually. Warping right in front of these machine gun guards sometimes doesn't go well. You saw that machine gun guy over to the right had fired 2 bursts, and he is now basically exhausted. So while he is spending his time reloading, I can jump over below him. He has that big sweep, but doesn't quite get over to me. Notice the guy on the left, instead of firing, has decided to call me in, which is really a lifesaver. It does mean that I have to deal with him, but that's what the warp is for. Now I jump up and stab down, and that's pretty much it. Now you saw that I left a decoy over there on the left side. That was first to avoid getting shot to death by all the machine gun guys, but it also has a separate, also very useful use here. Because sure enough, as soon as you hit that, more guys come out. That is, if you remember, you can warp to the ones you've placed before, so you can use that to get around rooms like that. Otherwise, I would have been caught by that light in the center. That bottom leftmost room there is probably the only unavoidably super dangerous part of this level. There is a much slower way to do this, where you actually end up taking the elevator down into this part, which is much safer. But again, that elevator takes forever, so we won't be using it to go up or down. Just because the speed of the elevators isn't really adjustable. There's nothing you can really do. I think these mines are meant to keep you from going this way, but man, they just make it more attractive to me. I actually would have gone in and gone kamikaze in that room if I had broken the window, but I know a more surefire way to take out everybody here, so I'm using that. It's also fun because you get to see a guard not really using his head, as is going to come up here in a minute. One frustrating thing is you can't stealth kill people if they are right below one of those skylights, or if they're below any glass surface or anything like that. See, it takes a full 3 turns to kill one of these guys the hard way. I probably could have had him dash himself to death out of the window there. And this is a shame. I wanted to go for that, but it just barely bounced off of him. But that's fine. We can pull ourselves up here and deal with him the other old-fashioned way. And the old warping somebody out of a window into a mine is always super satisfying. Getting around and sneaking and even fighting and killing in this game is just really satisfying. I died a whole bunch, like I said, the first time I played it. Fortunately, you can crawl just a little bit faster, or at least at the same speed as those laser eyes go. And again, this is another example of this would have been a really, really tough corridor if you just go down through it the regular way and don't deal with people this way. Now here I should have jumped up to the top left, I think, and gotten out of that tuxedo guard's field of view, because then I would have been close to that machine gun guy when he came out. I couldn't do the old trick of jumping up slightly above the tuxedo guy and jumping down because his spread would have killed me. I had to wait until he exhausted himself firing at my decoy. And see, now I kind of catch on to the thing to do and jump up into that until he loses me. Notice he fires his entire thing. Normally he gets 2 turns of firing, but when you're in free flow, they just shoot all their bullets. Anyway, that's that. That is everything hacked, and probably, if it wasn't for some weird stuff in the final level, then that would make this the hardest level. But because the final level has a few quirks to it, it actually gets the hardest level designation, I guess. This level you also want to path out. I mean, it's not exactly a cakewalk, but I don't know, to me, it's more stealth-based. It's sort of enforced stealth-based, I think. And so, I mean, not that I didn't use a lot of stealth in the other level, but I had the big kamikaze brawls. Just the fewer people you can deal with stealth-wise, and the bigger brawls you have to have, the harder a level is. I mean, you saw I had to deal with basically everybody that was in the bottom levels. And I could use more stealth on the right-hand side, but, well. I'm actually, sometimes he doesn't come out, but I think there were gunshots too close to his door, and so he decided to come out and see who was on his lawn, or whatever. Okay, here's another fun stealth part. You can see the civilians over there, so you don't want to get in a fight. What you want to do is lure the samurai over with sounds of hacking, and stealth kill him while he's up there. And similarly, you don't want to get into a fight with this guy, because they'll see it and call you in, and that'll be game. Instead, you just kind of give them a little accident. I like how they fly with their hands up. They just whoops. That's how they go. So as I say, I mean, this could have been trickier, but it just was enforced stealth. Now there's a terminal and a whole bunch of enemy doors, so if you're thinking, then you're going to break all of the windows beforehand, just because you don't want to attract any attention. Sure enough, somebody comes out of everyone, and boy, I really had some bad RNG here. One thing that I kinda don't like is, it is random who comes out of enemy doors. Sometimes it's a machine gun guy, and sometimes it's a tuxedo guy. And especially in New Game Plus, the difference in difficulty between those two enemy types is just so stark. I want him facing away before I do a stealth kill, or else he would have found me there. As it is, I'm found by this tuxedo guard, but he takes a turn getting ready anyway, so he can get stuffed. Anyway, the difference between the two of those is so stark that it's really just night and day difference. I'm thinking here especially of the first boss level with the old man. There's a section in the end of that. See if somebody, see somebody getting caught in a laser look at you. There's a section after you fought the old man. Right before you get out, there's 2 samurai and then a bunch of random guards coming out of enemy doors. And it's possible, I've seen it, where they're all machine gun guards, and I think it's real near impossible to do it if they're all machine gun guards. Sometimes those lasers kind of glitch out. There's a few glitches in the game, even now that it's out of early access. I've caught a few. Nothing particularly onerous or anything like that. Yeah, I can't resist the old knock him into the laser. Lasers, again, are instant death, just like the power lines were. Anyway, there's a couple of glitches that I found, and almost all of them have to do with when you're pressing spacebar and jumping around all the time and then using your grappling hook. But some of them, oh, see, look, I almost get caught here, so I'm really holding down spacebar and just doing as much pinpoint precision as I can. You can't grapple onto ledges, so I actually caught the area right under the ledge there. And sometimes you can rocket yourself through a window. I've seen that glitch. Look at this. You get neurotoxin again when you set that one off, but you get like 20 seconds. I think maybe they don't adjust the time for this one. Whew, that was close. I needed to hit him on my first jump, and so the fact that I was able to do that really saved that for me. Anyway, you could go all the way through the level again, but you really should just take this elevator up. Even the fact that they stop playing the music in these later levels is kind of a neat touch to me. It just shows that, you're out of... they play the music if you're in what would be a public building, but not if you're in a private lab like this. I'm not sure deploying neurotoxin after a big countdown is an effective safety measure. But anyway, I was talking about glitches. Sometimes, and this hasn't happened very often, but it's kind of funny to me when they do, but sometimes if you do a stealth kill on somebody, and maybe you're right on a corner or something like that, the rope won't attach to the ceiling correctly, and they'll be attached to like a ceiling a few floors above you, And so, I mean, it stinks because you have to end the level because they all of a sudden see a body and they call an alarm. But, whatever, it's funny. Anyway, that level wasn't as tricky to me, but this is the final level. One thing I don't like is there are 3 things that are different with this level that really radically change how it's played. We'll only see 2 of them, but I'll tell you about all 3, but they don't actually tell you about any of them, which is just, it's really weird. The first one, and I like how they give you this long elevator ride. It's like, yep, you're going to have to deal with all this. The first one is that there are no checkpoints in this level besides here. If you die, you appear right back here at the start. And again, I've got this pathed out. I've got a particular way that I want to handle this level. And it's relatively safe. You hold down spacebar here so that nobody manages to get any time in between these stabbings, and you can go super fast. Anyway, that's the first one, no checkpoints, and that's fine. That's just a challenge for the final level. The second one is that if you're hit with a bullet, it's not an instant kill like it is in all other levels. Instead, you get a countdown till death, and I think it might start at 8 or 9. I think 9 for some reason. And this again is, of course, in the final level, one of those, 2 areas connected by glass windows, and oh my heavens, look at all these bullets. This is so nuts. The decoys are absolutely necessary here. Anyway, the countdown from 9 goes, and when you reach 0, you die. Every time you're hit by a bullet, I would have died there if I hadn't warped. Every time you're hit by a bullet, the countdown decreases by 1, and every time you kill somebody, the countdown increases back to 9. So you can actually just kamikaze your way through the level, killing people to restore the timeout. That's interesting, and they don't tell you about it, but it's pretty obvious. The third thing they don't tell you about in this, notice the bump and then the stab, letting me do a nice little warp out the window there. That's pretty much necessary for this section. Anyway, the third thing they don't tell you about is that nobody will call you in this level. You saw that people on the left-hand side there must have seen me when I was killing everybody on the right-hand side. Heck, they were firing at me. And usually in a level, that would have been the kiss of death. There's no way I could have cleared everybody out in time. And again here, he's going to get down and be, look, I get seen by somebody in the bottom left row. But once I'm out of sight, I'm just out of mind. Now I don't know why he turns around there, but I'm glad he does. Anyway, my only thought for that is maybe this is the last place the company has, or whatever it is. I'm assuming it's a company. Maybe there's nowhere left to call it into, but they don't tell you that. And I was so used to, restarting a level as soon as I got seen and I knew that I couldn't kill the people in time, that I had to restart a bunch more times than I needed to. It's frustrating. Anyway, when this guy moves over to investigate the plate glass, he comes close enough for a stealth kill, otherwise he's not. Also, that door opens and the machine gun guy comes out whenever his window is broken. Here again, as before, because nobody remembers that I'm here, it's all about the old stealth kills. Notice that they hear the knife kill and they see me, but it's too late by this point. He takes a turn to turn around, which is extremely handy for me, otherwise he would have been on me instantly. And the good old warp knocks everybody down. Honestly, I'm past the hardest part of this level now, which is again the 2 areas separated by windows. It's just so deadly. I could stealth kill this guy, but this is riskier, but it does clear that mine out of the way, which is just handy for our eventual escape. You can see the final room coming up here. We're doing really good on time. We're gonna make it, I think. And this part can be really tough. I mean, you notice this hallway here, I'm still having to put down clones and everything, and there's a ton of enemies in that lower room, but for some reason it was just never that tough for me. Now I let the guy in the back completely exhaust his bullet supply, and indeed he's dealt with some permanence there. And as soon as this guy exhausts his store, he only had 1 stream left. Because he takes 2 turns to get ready, I can deal with that guy with all due finality. People fly at different angles depending on where you hit them, but I've never been able to do it exactly correctly. Alright, watch this because it's cool. Go in and hit him and stab him. That gives you the 3 you need for a warp. Warp up here and knock that guy off. Stab him as he goes down. You have the 2 you need for shurikens, and that's the ball game basically. Now that everybody's down, they take 2 to get up. And that's all you need to deal with the machine gun guard, and there's just these 3 chumps left. You get a warp from all those knocks. There goes the leader, the ringleader, the CEO guy, who's apparently plotting some kind of world takeover. or was until we took down his entire organization single-handed. And at half a minute to spare, we are going to make it for sure. So this was Ronin. This was a quick playthrough. I hope you liked it. I hope you have some questions, and I'll talk to you later in the thread.